Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Exploring the Lord of the Rings. This is session number 354. And tonight we are entering the second hall of Old Moria as we begin the process of following Gandalf's very specific directions of how, in fact, to get out. They thought that they could not get out, but now there seems to be a chance that they can get out after all. And you will remember the build-up as Gandalf was peering through the doorway, and the firelight was shining on his face. And now we've been invited to peek around the corner alongside him, and we will see what we will see. But first, a special announcement tonight. This past week, last Thursday, I officially kicked off the 2025 Fall fundraising campaign for Signum University. This is the time of year when I extend an enormous thanks to everybody who donates to Signum to make Signum possible. Signum University, our purpose is to share joy with people. That's what I try to do on this broadcast. That's what we try to do in all of the work that we do, whether it be in public broadcasts or whether it be in our graduate program, whether it be in our space modules and tutorials, whether it be in the collaboratory with the content that we create and share there, both there and in our store, whether it be at our events and our moots that are so much fun to attend. We love to create a place where people can find joy and people can pursue their joy. To give people the opportunity to learn and to learn about things that they love has been what has motivated me for a very, very long time. It's when you are learning is just, one of the most delightful and respectable ways to enjoy oneself. I have always found. Anyway, our purpose at Signum is sharing joy, and we love sharing it with you. And I just want to let everybody know, everybody who has donated to help support Signum University, that you are a huge part. You are contributing with us to share joy with others. And it means a lot to me to be able to join with you in that and to have your support in that. It's just huge. We are... Signum, one of the things, again, from the start, was not just to share joy through various mechanisms, in various opportunities to pursue it, but also to make it accessible to people, to make it cost as little as we can make it. Our graduate school tuition is a small fraction of what most graduate programs charge for classes. For our space and tutorials classes, you can take our classes for well under $200 a month. Is all the tuition that we charge there. In our tutorials program, you can come in and you can get a world-class scholar in our fields to be your personal mentor and advisor on your personal project, whether it's a research project or a creative project or whatever. You can get one of our regular professors, one of our world-renowned specialists, to be your mentor and to work with you on your project. You want to, prepare you want to give a talk, for instance, at a moot. You can work on your talk with the help of one of our, you can get Sarah Brown or Amy Sturgis or somebody like that to help you with your moot talk. And it only costs $175 a month. It's, we try to, in our collaboratory, you can subscribe to the collaboratory and get access to all of the thousands of hours of lecture content that we've created, as well as books and videos and everything else. And it still only costs $9 a month for a subscription. All of the prices for everything that and then of course this broadcast costs you nothing at all, right? I'm able to do this for free. This and many other broadcasts that we keep available. And over the years, many times, I have been advised, it has been suggested, maybe you should try a little bit of a paywall, right? Just to kind of help to make the ends meet at Signum. And I've resisted that. Again, all of this stuff is made possible. All of these things we are able to do because of the generous support of our donors. Our annual fund is absolutely necessary for Signum to keep going, for Signum to be able to continue to do what it is that we do. Anyway, so that is my primary announcement and message, just first to thank very much everyone who has donated and who continues to donate. Many of you have set up monthly donations that continue to run, and that is an enormous support. I remember back at the very beginning, this was like 13 years ago when we first started. That very first year, we didn't have monthly donations. It wasn't possible for us to set that up. So we only had annual just like one-time donations. And so it was great because we raised a lot of money, but then we had to make it last for a year, right? Oh man, the next year when we were able to take monthly donations and we started getting every month we could count on, a certain amount of money that would be coming in. It was so much easier to budget for that. But in any case, we are hugely grateful for all of the donations that we've made. And I would invite everybody, if you've never donated to Signum before, I would encourage you to consider making this the year in which you make a donation to Signum University. If you, even small donations help and add up. Of course, larger donations are also very good too. Monthly donations are great. Go to signumuniversity.org/donate. If you have questions, you can send an email to donate@signumu.org. And we will be enormously grateful for your help. Donations to Signum are tax exempt in America. These are tax deductible donations. Apologies to people outside of America for whom this doesn't have any bearing on your taxes. But anyway, I would strongly encourage you to consider donating to help support this broadcast and everything else happening at Signum University. Yeah, good. So you donate, Lord of Salamandastron, at signumuniversity.org/donate. Yes. And I'm going to give a longer answer to the accreditation question, but not tonight. Those of you who have heard me talk about this before know that I get a little bit of a head of steam when I talk about this subject. So we're going to talk about it, but I'm not going to let myself begin that particular explanation right now. What you can count on, though, I'm going to be talking about that at our State of the University address. So the culmination of our fall fundraising campaign is in, as ever, the campaign ending webathon, which is going to be on Saturday, November 22nd. Saturday, November 22nd is going to be the all-day Signum University webathon, in the midst of which, right at midday, I'm going to be giving the State of the University address for 2025, and I will talk about that and much more about what is coming down the pike at that point. So yeah, and by the way, and in the morning of the 22nd of November is our space showcase, where we're going to be doing a bunch of space mini modules so that you can come and learn some stuff and get a flavor of what our space program is like. But anyway, yes, that is coming up on the 22nd of November. And as I say, in the middle of the day, I believe at noon, I will be starting the State of the University address. Anyway, yeah. Nota Sapiens, that's a fine, brief summary. I would say it longer than that. And you were very gentle. I would endeavor not to use many cuss words, but yes, that's that's more or less where we would be. Anyway, yes, Lord of Salabandastron, it will be. Your name has a lot of syllables. That will also certainly be on Twitch and YouTube as well. Yep. Thank Brian Jakes. Yeah, I understand. How did he pronounce his last name? Jaquis? How many syllables did he give I never really understood how to say his last name aloud. Jax? Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Who knows? Okay. In any case, let us get, by the way, I want to do a drawing. But let's wait until right before the end of the, like right at the transition, at the end of our book discussion, as we're transitioning to the because I always like to do giveaways during the fundraising campaign. So let's do a giveaway tonight. And tonight I want to give away a space token. So this is a token that you can get. You can take an entire space module. You can get a month tutorial. Like I said, we'll give away a space token. So we'll kind of raffle that off. I'm going to do that on Discord. So people who are listening on YouTube and Twitch, you should join our Signum University Discord, because I'm gonna do a little raffle off here on Discord. But I say we'll do that at the end, at the transition there. All right. Very good. Let's see what is around the corner in the second hall. And I hope you can explain it to me, because I don't really understand. Here we go. They peered out. Before them was another cavernous hall. It was loftier and far longer than the one in which they had slept. They were near its eastern end. Westward it ran away into darkness. Down the center stalked a double line of towering pillars. They were carved like boles of mighty trees, whose boughs upheld the roof with a branching tracery of stone. Their stems were smooth and black, but a red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. Right across the floor, close to the feet of two huge pillars, a great fissure had opened. Out of it a fierce red light came, and now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. Wisps of dark smoke wavered in the hot air. Okay. Lupita, yeah, there's a bunch of very interesting word choices in here. Don't you think? Loftier. It was loftier and far longer than the one in which they had slept. That is the first example, Lupita, I would give of a place where Tolkien seems clearly to be making his word choice based on alliteration. The other one that there are several others. Their stems were smooth and black. Stems were smooth. Stems. There are a bunch of words he could have used to describe the pillars carved like boles of mighty trees. Stems strikes me as a little bit unusual. Another one is a fierce red light. It's pretty unusual to describe light as fierce. But of course it comes right in the middle of a whole bunch of F's, right? Right across the floor, a great fissure, a fierce red light, and again, flames licked, right? So we got a bunch of F sounds right there in those two sentences, which seems to have led to a predilection of for F sounds there. Not to mention, I mean, notice brink and curled about the bases of the columns. B, C, B, C. Wisps wavered. I have come to expect at least a certain kind of medium level of alliteration in a descriptive paragraph like this, when he actually does physical description, which is far less than most people think. A lot of people talk about Tolkien's landscape descriptions. I maintain Tolkien actually spends very little time describing landscape, not describing in the sense of telling us what it looked like. If that's what a description is, he doesn't do it very much. But there are a lot of times where he will do, he will tell us. Notice the first sentence. They peered out. That's a totally unnecessary sentence, right? He could have just begun this paragraph with, before them was another cavern. We were told at the end of the last paragraph that Gandalf said they should come forward and have a look out, right? We could have just started with, before them was another cavernous hall. Just the description. But we don't get just the description. We get that first sentence, right? That first sentence which describes the action, which provides a kind of frame. Eric, yeah, I agree there. And yes, Little Room Johnny, you're right. Much more reserved action than all the running and fleeing that was happening before. Peering is very careful. Miss Ray, I agree. Here's one of the things that I would emphasize about it. Remember how so let me just go. I gotta go. I always put them at the bottom, so I'm gonna forward to go to the last one. Here's last week's passage. Remember the description that we got here. They could see the road sloping down, the low archway. Through it a growing light came. When they came to the arch, Gandalf went through, signing to them to wait. As he stood just beyond the opening, they saw his face lit by a red glow. So they're seeing Gandalf like in profile, right? They have to be seeing him in profile. If they were seeing him from behind, they wouldn't see his face at all, and they'd be seeing through the arch themselves, right? So that's clearly not what's happening. As we decided last time, he's going 90 degrees off the side of the hallway, and they're seeing the light on his face in profile. So they were looking at, before that, we along with the company were looking down at Gandalf, looking through the doorway, and then Gandalf came back and said some things, including the word devilry, about what he saw, right? That is why, therefore, what is interesting to me, when we go back, they peered out. Now what's happening? Before, we were standing with the hobbits, looking down at Gandalf, looking out into the hallway, seeing the firelight on Gandalf's face. Now, we're seeing them, right? Green Great Dragon, you joke, but that's exactly what's happening here, right? Gandalf is joking at looking at Gandalf versus looking along Gandalf. That's a very funny and obscure joke. And I fear will take a long time to explain. But I will anyway, because it's worth it, because it's relevant. This comes from C.S. Lewis's little essay called something in a tool shed. It's like Contemplations in a Tool Shed. Meditations. That was it. Meditations in a Tool Shed. And what he's talking about, he talks about how you're in a dark tool shed, like a wooden tool shed, and sunlight will come through a crack in the wall. And when you look at the beam of light in the darkness, you can see it from the outside. And it just looks like this solid beam, and you can see the dust motes dancing in it and everything as you're seeing it come. But if you put your eye into the beam and you look along the beam instead of looking at the beam, you see outside. You see the world outside, and you can't see the tool shed at all anymore. So yeah, Tolkien kind of talks about this too a little bit. This whole kind of idea. So that was the joke that Green Great Dragon was making about looking at Gandalf instead of looking along Gandalf. I've often alluded to this because I find it very useful when talking about Tolkien's, like when I'm answering Tolkien questions, there's always two different kinds of, like when somebody asks a question, right? When, like whatever, like, do elves get reincarnated, or somebody asks me that question and I'm like, well, how do you answer that question? Because there's always two answers, or there's not just two answers, always two different kinds of answers to any question about Tolkien. And I always think back to Lewis's metaphor there in Meditations in a Tool Shed, because there's if I look along the beam, like there's a within Middle Earth answer to the question, right? If I'm like, okay, I'll put myself in the time of the writing of the Lord of the Rings and try to answer that question from within the Lord of the Rings as best I can. But then, of course, there's the answer not looking along the beam, but looking at the beam, right? That is to say, if I look at the whole history of Tolkien's stories, right, and the development of Tolkien's thought over time, I can give a different answer to that question. And this is true in almost any question anyone ever asks about Tolkien. So I've always found that metaphor really interesting. However, when there is an interest, I said it's relevant, because to some extent, there's a similarity with what's happening here. Before the narrative perspective was a perspective with the hobbits, right? We're standing with the hobbits and we're looking down at Gandalf. And this is the general perspective of the narrative. The Lord of the Rings never really is told from within an omniscient perspective. No, that's fair to say. We get something like, well, not an omniscient. He's definitely not omniscient. But we get a different sort of external perspective. I'll say external, not omniscient. We get an external perspective in the prologue and the appendices. That is the voice, the persona that Tolkien adopts, his modern researcher frame. Right. In the prologue, it's very, very clear. It was clearer in the earlier drafts of the appendices, less clear in the published drafts of the appendices. We're reading this in Peoples of Middle-earth right now on Wednesday nights. But that is the development of the appendices. However, the frame. So Tolkien adopts the persona of a modern researcher who has found not the Red Book, but the Thane's Book, right, of Minas Tirith, and is doing all of the, this editing and translating, right? And that's where the Lord of the Rings, the modern English book, came from. That's the sort of, the fictional frame that Tolkien writes the whole thing within. But that voice is almost never heard in the Lord of the Rings. It's heard in The Hobbit. That's the main thing. One of them. No, I think it's fair to say it's in my opinion, the biggest difference between The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings is that the narrative, the narrative voice, a narrative voice which assumes that persona of the modern person who is telling us the story, howsoever he learned it. We don't discover how he learned it in The Hobbit. But we get that person. That's why we get reference to things like Christmas trees. The express train, Lupita, absolutely. Yeah. And we do get it in chapter 1, the making us sound like an express train, right? Those sort of apparent anachronisms aren't anachronisms built into Middle Earth. They're the modern narrator speaking to the modern reader in the context of telling us the story, right? But again, that's chapter 1 is still very much the sequel of The Hobbit, right? And Tolkien didn't totally change that. But in any case, yes, Fencing Frog, that is a perfect illustration, not just thinking about the things like anachronisms and stuff. But yes, when the narrator speaks to us directly, the readers directly during the riddle game, mentioning how it's probably easy for us to, think of the answer, but, just imagine being poor Bilbo, right? Remember those, that's a perfect example of the way in which the narrator and the narrator's perspective is much more intrusive. And we never get that in The Lord of the Rings after chapter 1, at least. Even in chapter 1, we don't get it anything like as much as we get it in The Hobbit. Yeah, Lord of Salamandastron, there are a few internal things which would certainly be considered anachronisms by stricter folks. Things like umbrellas and matches and most of all mantelpiece clocks like Bilbo has. Yeah. Potatoes are a little bit not exactly an anachronism. I don't think. I wouldn't classify them the same. I mean, I know potatoes didn't come to Europe until, after the exploration of the New World. But I don't find that sufficient justification to say that they didn't have them in Middle Earth. You could just as well make an argument that say they lost the potato and only rediscovered it, afterwards. Anyway. But in any case, the second hall. Where are we with that first sentence? They peered out. For a moment, for 3 words, our experience is detached from the experience of the hobbits. We're being told what they did. They, the rest of the company, the other 8 of them, including the 4 hobbits, right? They peered out. For that second, we are looking at them peering out. Now we're seeing all of the rest of the company in profile with firelight on their faces like Gandalf was, right? Before we ourselves are invited in, had Tolkien not used those 3 words, they peered out, there wouldn't be that gap. There wouldn't be that shift. We would just be seeing out because they were seeing out, right? But we are, our view is we are no longer just getting, as we have been so much. Again, we were especially noticing this during the Chamber of Mizarble and since their flight from the fight in the Chamber of Mizarble and the flight thereafter, all of the sensory experience, the sound, the audible and tactile experiences they've been having because they've not been able to see for almost that entire time. Remember the way in which we got these disjointed, hearing of sounds in the hall. Remember all of that language in which, we got like arrows coming in, the arm reaching in, the foot, right? All of these, and remember how it was, the way that Tolkien framed that was just like, this is what is happening. We were with the hobbits, kind of transfixed by horror and passive in the middle of it, just experiencing these things in this sort of detached way. No larger commentary or explanation of what was going on, right? And certainly nothing omniscient. Everything within the framework of the sense, the sensual experience of the hobbits themselves, right? And then for three words, right? They peered out. Now we're looking at them, and that's really the first time that we've seen that. Yeah. Okay, you guys are getting distracted and talking about clocks. We're not talking about clocks right now. We're done talking about clocks. We're about to talk about bowls of trees in just a minute. Let's look out at yeah. No, let's focus on the second hall now. Here we go. Let's look at those bees, the bowls, the branches, the boughs. Eric, just as you say. Before them was another cavernous hall. It was loftier and far longer than the one in which they had slept. Okay, I'm going to come back to directions and stuff in a minute. We're going to get really practical, but first I want to be impractical. First, I want to look at how he is shaping this, because it's quite lovely. It was loftier and far longer than the one in which they had slept. They were near its eastern end, even slept with that L tucked into slept there. Again, he doesn't have to describe it that way, the one in which they had slept. And remember, they only got the faintest glimpse of that. Well, they could see in the morning when the light came in, so they got a better look in the morning. They were near its eastern end. Westward, it ran away into darkness. Don't you love that? It ran away into dark. The hall runs away into darkness. The hall is lofty and long, and now it's running away. Running like a river runs, Aranas. Yes, I agree. It's not fleeing them, right? Even though they're rather thinking about fleeing, right? They might have flight on the mind in that sense. But motion. Yes. Yes, Eric, remember how they felt the movement of air. There were those references to the movement of air when they discovered the 21st Hall. They'd been walking for a long time, remember, with Gandalf's staff like a will-o'-the-wisp. Though this is the bit that was like exactly a year ago that we were talking about. And then they came to a point where they could feel the cold air, right? Remember all that? Now we get the movement of the hall. It's running away into darkness. Down the center stalked a double line of towering pillars. And stalk is lovely, isn't it? It's lovely because it's well, it has a double meaning, right? On the one hand, it's just the verb stalked. And that verb, there's a little bit of anthropomorphism to it. I agree. And it also is, there's a kind of stateliness to it, right? And threat. You stalk in a couple of, we tend to use the word stalk in only one sense anymore, which is a shame, because it's a nice word, and now we only use it for a very ugly thing anymore, like online stalking. But it has a much broader word. It used to mean hunting. Stalking was primarily what you would do in, to be a deer stalker. Absolutely. So it meant to, go carefully and quietly through the forest in search of game. Yeah, to move stealthily. But because it's associated with stealthy movement, it's also associated with slow and deliberate movement. Cats stalk. Yes, angry cats stalk. Like herons stalk as well. Like long-legged waterfowl stalk also. Again, it's associated with walking stiffly or haughtily. I can get behind that definition. And alertness, Rowan. I agree. There's a kind of alertness to it, and there's also usually a kind of I don't know, deliberateness about it. But of course, it's also a pun. It also, it's right near the word stem, right? The word stem is also going to be used to describe those same pillars. And if they're stems, they're also stalks, right? Like the stalk of a plant. Which is what, so anyway, so describing the towering pillars stalking down the center of this room. There's the sense of them looming, right? Again, there's movement, just like the hall itself is running away into darkness. There's this sense of movement, like the columns are marching. But think of the difference there. Think of the difference between, he could have said down the center marched a double line of towering pillars, but see how differently that hits you? The metaphor of marching conveys one set of ideas, right? One set of associations with these pillars, but stalking is different, right? Stalking makes you like, are they sneaking? Right? A movement that is so slow and cautious that you're not sure if it is movement, right? Yes, Andrew, I agree. I also love it when he uses these very active verbs to describe the landscape. Yes. 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 Deliberateness, Notosapiens. Yes. I think that seems to fit the kind of motion that he's describing here. Down the center stalked a double line of towering pillars. And notice again the sounds. Ran away into darkness, down the center, double line of towering pillars. Remember, D's and T's are practically the same consonant there. And then it shifts from D and T to B. They were carved like boles of mighty trees whose boughs upheld the roof with a branching tracery of stone. Here are the R's in there too. Not just, so we get it with roof, and then we get it attached in branching tracery. So we got the one R and then the BR and then the TR. So we get that liquid sound working in. They were carved. The double line of towering pillars. They were carved like boles of mighty trees whose boughs upheld the roof with a branching tracery of stone. Colin, I've always loved. Somewhere in almost every paragraph of Tolkien's descriptions is some phrase that I just found enchanting when I was a child. That's the one in this paragraph for me. Branching tracery of stone. Notice the similarity between those two words, like in the shape of them. You've got the plosive B and T, and then the R, and then the A, and then you've got inch and S, right? You've got there's like a sort of a C sound, right? But they're very different sounds. But branching tracery of stone. Again, just one of those phrases I would just like mouth to myself, branching tracery of stone. In fact, the sound of that phrase I always used to love so much that I never even really understood what it meant. Like the meaning of the words was kind of lost for me in the sound of the words. Branching tracery of stone. But I imagine that it means that you see, it's not just that the columns are designed to look like the trunks of trees, but that they then spread out to look like the branches are then, are then traced or then carved into the ceiling. Yeah. Sorry, I know I wax very lyrical about this, the sounding of certain phrases, but honestly, it's one of the things that I think I gained from Tolkien at an early age was just the delight in the sound of words. Tolkien tells the story about how when he was a child, he would sit and he would look at the Welsh names on the side of the railway cars, right, as they came by, and would just sort of marvel at those. Like that's where, he kind of traces his own delight in words and sounds and things like that. It's Tolkien's own ear for phrases and the sounds and cadences of words that taught, like I would read things like single oblong block or branching tracery of stone and just have the similar kind of experience, right? It wasn't it didn't stir in me, the same kind of like linguistic curiosity that Tolkien's childhood experiences did. But it did spark in me a lifelong interest in the sound of words. And that's why the words that I love most are the words whose sounds are most curious. Anyway, their stems were smooth and black, but a red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. Right across the floor, close to the feet of two huge pillars, a great fissure had opened. Out of it a fierce red light came, and now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. Notice that once you... yes, Sphinx, that is a very powerful but. Notice how you can begin to feel like... I don't know how to say it. The economy of his sounds here. He has brought us to associate the plosives, the initial D, the initial B, and then the R with the pillars. Down the center stalked a double line of towering pillars. They were carved like boles of mighty trees, whose boughs upheld the roof with a branching tracery of stone. Their stems were smooth and black, but a red glow. Notice this is our first initial G in the entire paragraph, but a red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. Darkly, because it's on the pillars, right? Which are associated with that D sound now in our heads, right? Right across the floor, we get our F. Have we had an F word? I don't think we have. We had an F like loftier, but I don't think we've started a word with F yet. Right across the floor, close to the feet of two huge pillars, a great fissure. The G from glow, F from floor, F from feet. A great fissure had opened. Out of it a fierce red light came, and now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. Notice how as soon as he's talking about as our eyes move up from the flames back to the columns, right? The brink of the floor and the bases of the columns, we get the B's again. Wisps of dark smoke wavered in the hot air. Again, it's not like he's not coloring by number here, right, as far as the sounds are concerned. But do you see what I mean? He gives us the fiery opening in the floor, right? The liquid R transitions us into it. And we get the G and the F. And the G and the F are the sound of the flames in this pit, in the fissure, right? Where the sounds of the columns are D and B. And the R kind of connects them. And that is interesting, Eric. With the advent of the red glow after the but, which I agree is a very important but. As soon as we get to the but, he leaves the tree imagery. It doesn't talk about stems or boles or even stalks anymore, right? And now they're just columns again. Eric, that's a great observation. Yeah. Little Room Johnny is remembering the last time we were surrounded by trees on fire, which was up on the tor, right up on the hill, when the wolves were attacking. Yeah. Praise. I do think he's trying to that he's sort of evoking vibes with alliteration, and as always, I believe that this is subconscious. That is to say, he may be consciously thinking about it. I don't know if he is or if he's just doing it. That's not my point. What I mean is I don't even think, even if he did consciously fully intend this, if he was looking at this paragraph and being like, okay, because I do think that we can see evidence. I think we can see evidence that he's making word choices in order to do the alliteration. I think he's clearly opting for alliteration several times in this paragraph. Yeah. Anyway, whether or not I think we can see him making that choice. And it's possible that he did in fact say like, okay, I'm not going to use any G words or F words until I get to it's possible that he actually thought that to himself, but whether he did or not, I don't think he was expecting us to notice. Like, believe it or not, I don't think Tolkien had Exploring the Lord of the Rings in mind when he wrote The Lord of the Rings. I don't think he ever expected people to be reading it quite this slowly. But when you do, you can notice what he's doing once you twig to it, which we didn't do for a long time. Realize I didn't pick up on the alliterative patterns. Even studying as slowly as we've been, I didn't pick up on the alliterative patterns in his prose until well into book 2. It was after the Council of Elrond. It was on Karathras that I first noticed the alliterative patterns in his prose. I mean, it's kind of amazing, but in any case, we need to look for alliterations on Weathertop. Yeah, we kind of do. We kind of do. But in any case, like, as I said, so my point is, I don't think he expected people to notice this, but I think that he expected people to feel it. That, you know, those who had an ear to hear these kinds of patterns, anyone who would read it aloud would be affected by this. The shift in sound that happens at this point. Yeah. You can feel the whole shape. The whole shape of the paragraph just in its alliterative pattern. Anyway, let's talk more about this fissure, because oh yeah, hang on. No, Eric, I wanted to come back to that phrase that you were just pointing to. But a red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. For something to be mirrored darkly, and yes, I have a hard time not thinking of St. Paul as well, and 1 Corinthians 13. We see now through a glass darkly, but then we will see face to face. Sorry, it's not 13, but anyway, yeah, we see now in a glass darkly. That's a glass means a mirror. In a glass darkly is the 17th century. That's the King James translation. And in 1611, I think 1611 was the date of the King James. 1614, I think, was the year of Shakespeare's death. I always get those two dates confused in my head. Yeah, 1611 was the King James. Okay. 1611 was the King James. In 1611, the word glass meant mirror. It means we see in a mirror darkly, meaning you can't see very clearly. 1616, see, look, I got Shakespeare's death wrong anyway. Okay, it is 1 Corinthians 13. I was doubting myself for some reason. Yes, so now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am known. Yes, now we're not... I don't think that he's making a clear allusion there, but it's hard not to hear darkly and mirror next to each other and not be thinking about that very famous passage in St. Paul, which almost all of you will have heard at some wedding or other at some point. But in any case, setting St. Paul aside for a moment, something to be darkly mirrored is an unusual phrase, again, outside of 1 Corinthians in the first place. But for a glow to be mirrored darkly is really interesting. The red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. I'm not even sure what that means. I feel like one of the things that he is emphasizing is that it isn't bright. On the one hand, he is inviting us to imagine. Having invited us to imagine the pillar trees, right? Boles of mighty trees whose boughs upheld the roof, and we're looking at the roof, right? So we get this really striking, lovely picture of the hall and the pillars. But then we get the but where's the fire? Isn't something on fire? Wasn't that one of the, isn't there some devilry at work? Where's the devilry? Exactly, right? That's the but the second half of that sentence is the transition to the fire. Their stems were smooth and black, but a red glow was darkly mirrored in their sides. So the first time we see the light, their eyes are not immediately drawn to the fissure. Their eyes are drawn to the cavern, to the pillars, the tree pillars. But then it's the light darkly mirrored on the tree pillars that leads them to, which like brings their eyes down to the fissure, the red glow that they can see. But it's not like it's, I don't know, it's not reflecting brightly, apparently. Is darkly the opposite of brightly? Yeah. Was darkly mirrored in their sides. And then right across the floor, close to the feet of two huge pillars, a great fissure had opened. Remind me to come back to darkly and devilry in a minute. But fissure first. Okay. A great fissure had opened. Notice this is the first time we get awkward movement again. I don't count running away into darkness, the hall running away into darkness. That's not awkward. That's just cool, right? Describing a huge thing as if it's in motion, that's like normal for Tolkien's descriptions, right? But notice how he shifts to, like, his tense gets weird here. Down the center stalked, they were carved, their stems were smooth, a red glow was mirrored. And then we shift to the perfect. A great fissure had opened. The fissure just opened. Yeah, it's past perfect. The fissure had opened. Like it just did it. It's an active verb with fissure as its subject. Out of it, a fierce red light came. And now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. It's like a kind of invasion. The fissure opened in the hall. Gandalf knows this fissure was not there before. This is the devilry, I think. And there's something. The flames licking and curling, I suppose, is normal enough. Out of it, a fierce red light came. Remember back in the Chamber of Mizarble, what was weird was that things kept being like passive, right? Like, but it wasn't exactly passive. Like noises kept happening, right? You remember all those passages? Here, he's describing two things which he is making active. The fissure opened. The light came out of it. And I agree, fierce is the strongest descriptor in the whole paragraph. That red light is mad. Right? It is fierce. And it's coming. It gets an active verb. It is coming out of that fissure, that light. It's not just there. Right? It's not just, I mean, the room is, they're seeing everything that they're seeing by the light of, by this red light. It's easy to take light for granted. But here we have the light. Yes, we got the stationary trees and the active fire. Yes. Yes. Out of it, a fierce red light came. It's the combination, the activeness of the adjective fierce, which makes the light not only sound like an actor, but a violent actor. And now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. This is a hostile invasion of this hall by the fierce red light and the flames. And a great fissure had opened. What seems curious to me about that is that doesn't describe sensual experience. They're not seeing something opening. Again, remember, we kept getting that in the Chamber of Mizarbo, right? Things kept happening. Sounds kept occurring. We were getting the immediate sense, we weren't even like, without even processing what it was, like with the review of The Troll, right? Thuds and thumps were happening, and then a hand is there and a foot is there, but we're never so told a troll is there, right? It's never put together. We're just getting detached images. Here, they don't see the fissure open. It's already open. There's a projection of activity there, of moving there, that they're like reading into it. There's just a fissure. It's a crack in the floor. It's not doing anything. Presumably, it doesn't say that it's moving right now. It's in the past perfect, which means it's done opening. Right? Past perfect means it's an action completed in the past. So not only is the action done, it's not even like it just finished opening. It finished opening a while back. In other words, it's not opening. Why are they calling it that? Like, why does he use that word? He invites us by using the verb opened in any tense with the noun fissure. He invites us to imagine that crack splitting open in the floor. They didn't see a before and after. They've never seen, Gandalf and Aragorn have seen this hall before, but most of them have not seen this hall before, right? Far as they know, this is a feature. Oh, there's a nice little fire feature in the middle of it, right? If Gandalf hadn't said his piece about the lower halls being on fire or whatever, and they just come around, they'd be like, oh, okay, I guess there's, hey, Gimli, why did they make a, fissure across this hall? But the word invites us to imagine that as an action, just as it's inviting us to imagine the emergence of the light out of the fissure as an action. And a violent action. Out of it, a fierce red light came. So the fissure, it's not just there. It's active. And I think this is the answer to the question, what was the devilry? Has to have been opening this chasm, this fissure in the floor. Out of it a fierce red light came, and now and again flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. So the hall is not in fact on fire. Like, I don't know about you, but with Gandalf's lead up, it kind of sounds like when you do peer out into the hall, you might expect to see flames leaping, like the hall being on fire, but the hall's not on fire. It's got a fissure. And notice, are flames leaping up? No, flames aren't leaping up out of the fissure. You can tell flames are down there because now and again a flame licks at the brink of the fissure. So you can just see a little bit of flames. Occasionally, they get as high as the brink and curling about the base of the columns. Yes, they're licking at the brink. Somebody was asking about licking. This does a couple things. Not only does the word lick go together rather disturbingly with fierce, right? To suggest like some kind of not just ferocious thing, but ferocious carnivorous thing. So that's a little disturbing. But also there's the sound. Licked at the brink. Those K sounds, not at the end and curled at the beginning, but licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the column. The light came. Yeah. So G, F, and K being the sounds that are the sounds of the fissure and the flames. Yes. Out of it a fierce red light came, and now and again flames licked at the brink. Here we got the G again. Flames licked at the again. Flames licked. That phrase. There you go. That's the fissure in 3 words, sound wise, right? Again, flames licked at the brink and curled about the bases of the columns. Little Room Johnny, almost all of the paragraphs that Tolkien dedicates to describing a scene are very onomatopoetic. Yes. Wisps of dark smoke wavered in the hot air. Anyway, so yeah, it's pretty ominous. Back to the devilry. I said I was going to come back to devilry. Darkly. There's a kind of irony immediately in saying a glow was darkly mirrored. When St. Paul talks about seeing in a glass darkly, what's he suggesting we're seeing in a glass darkly? Ourselves. Because that's what you see in a glass, after all, in a mirror, right? Paul is saying we don't see ourselves clearly. And any of you who have ever looked in a mirror from any amount of time ago, look in a mirror that is more than 200 years old, and you will see in a glass darkly in general. So he's talking about seeing a physical object unclearly, darkly, because it's obscured, probably mostly, by the deficiencies of the reflective surface. However, here, it's not like a solid object that we're seeing reflected darkly. It's light we're seeing reflected darkly. There's a kind of paradox, almost a kind of mystery to that. How can a glow be mirrored darkly? It's a light. The answer is, if there's devilry afoot, I think, perhaps. Is there some kind of light which is more like darkness than light? Is there an unlight or something like that? And I'm not exactly thinking about Ungoliant here. That was a darkness that is more than lack of light. That was a positive darkness he was trying to describe there. This isn't exactly a positive darkness. It's light. But how if the light, when it's reflected back to you, seems not like light, but like darkness in some sense? I think that it is... yes, light that darkens rather than revealing. Yes. Shadow and flame. Notice there's a bunch of shadow and flame here. Not only the red glow darkly mirrored, but the ending with the wisps of dark smoke wavering in the hot air. The shadows of the smoke. This does not seem like normal fire. Yes. And again, what were we expecting to see? What were we expecting to see? Remember Gandalf's less than perfectly helpful description? There is some new devilry here, devised for our welcome, no doubt. Okay, so somebody cast an evil magic spell, which you're sarcastically saying was designed for something that was designed to harm us or entrap us or something. Great. This is what we're going to come around the corner and see, right? And then he changes the subject. But the good news is I know where we are and here's the directions of how to get out, right? But what's the devilry? Come and look. Right? That's how we got here. So we're looking out and we're like, where's the devilry? And they look at it and they're like, whoa, this is a huge hall. Whoa, wow. Look at the columns stalking like trees. But then we see the red glow darkly mirrored in it, and our eyes are drawn down and we see the devilry. And you can feel it. The fissure is opened like a mouth. The fierce red light comes out and the flames lick at the brink and curl at the bases of the columns. Wisps of dark smoke wavering in the hot air. It's not just fire. It's not just like, oh no, we might get burned up. There's no threat of being burned up. Like this isn't like a contagious fire. It's not that kind of ominous. It's not peril, exactly, not physical danger. Exactly. But something is not right about that. And I think that all of that, the ascribing of fierceness, even of the opening to the fissure, I say like a mouth because of the licking, but anyway, it could also be like the lair of something from deep beneath. And you are correct, Green Great Dragon. He never says the word fire in this description. We get flames is the closest that we get to it. But he doesn't actually say the word fire. Yeah. And smoke. Yes. Um, yeah. So, what is the devilry? He hasn't answered the question. We don't really know. We just look at this fissure and have a bad feeling about this. That thing looks evil. Now, it's running right across the floor. This begins my challenges. We'll return to this next time because my spatial challenges will continue. But I believe when he says right across the floor, he means that the fissure is like, I was going to say bisecting, but that suggests in equal halves, and we don't know if it's equal. But we get the space moving away at the beginning. Before them was another cavernous hall. They were near its eastern end, and westward it ran away into darkness. So they're seeing an extending out in front of them. And then right across the floor, a great fissure had opened. So it's cutting across. It's cutting across the floor. My last question is, yeah, that's really good. The stems stalk away and the fissure is across. My mind was blown by their being near its eastern end and it's running away westward into darkness. That can't be right. Can it? How is the second hall running away westward? Am I just confused? Well, no, I am 100% confused. They're headed east? Like the gate is east of them. The hall feels like it's going in the opposite direction to where it should be. Right. Because they're not looking down. They don't have to cross the whole way. Right. Okay. So they've come down and they've come almost to the eastern end. So when they're looking westward, the way that it's running is back. So they've come south. I have to reorient myself because my theory wasn't right last week. They were headed probably east and then had to turn south. Yes, to enter into the hall. And then they go through the hall and they look out and they're like, oh, we're way here at the eastern end, down there to the west. Yes. Yes. So they've come in a side door. Yes. Way down near the eastern end, which is the good end. The exit facing end. So they're looking to their right westward. Correct. So that adds one final dimension then of this whole situation, is that they are looking, this whole paragraph, this whole scene is oriented opposite to the exit. When they come through, instead of looking left to the east, i.e. towards the door, they are looking back, in a sense, over their right-hand shoulders. They're looking behind them. Yes. So, in a sense, this whole paragraph is completely unnecessary. In the sense that this is not where they're going. And fortunately, the creepy, fierce fissure, they can just run away from it. They don't have to have anything to do with it. Yeah. Jackie, yeah, so it still looks like they'll get away. But notice how he's setting up the Balrog already. The devilry. It's about as soon as Gandalf says devilry, especially now that we understand what devilry means in The Lord of the Rings, having discussed that for like 20 minutes last week, we were expecting whatever that thing was that Gandalf met in the Chamber of Mizarbo. Whatever that thing was that did the terrible counterspell and everything else, right? And back in the direction from which pursuit might come, because pursuit has not been coming back directly behind them. They've been safe as far as what is literally behind them in their passageway is concerned because of the cave-in, apparently. But back towards the west, into Moria, representing the devilry, right? Which again, I've just called a devilry, is this hungry, licking, fierce, great fissure. Which gives us the first hint of what the thing is. A mixture of heat and darkness, JJ. Exactly. Jackie says, I bet anyone who read the Book of Lost Tales before the Lord of the Rings would know it's a Balrog. Right, so, Edith, then? I'm trying to think of like who yeah, there was like seriously, is there anybody besides him and Edith? Christopher wasn't even born. I mean, he might have read it by then, maybe, but I don't even know. Like, when did Christopher first read the Book of Lost Tales, I wonder? He probably had read it. But anyway, yeah. Nancy, that's a really great question. We don't know, of course, but Nancy says, is this chamber far enough away from the Chamber of Mizarbo that the collapse had nothing to do with the formation of the fissure? Yes, I think so. It's been miles. They've been walking for a long time. So it's a long ways away, but it's worth remembering because these are they're two examples of like disruption in the architecture of Moria, right? The giving way of the wall and the ceiling in the Chamber of Mizarbo, and now the opening of the fissure. Yeah. Okay. Both of them done by devilry. Well, Gandalf's wasn't exactly devilry, but depending on how you feel about words of command. Yeah. Okay. Tune in next time. All right, but before we go, I want to do a giveaway. Space token giveaway. Hey, Druid's Fire, we don't have a way to do a drawing in the channel, do we?
Nope.
Do we have any way to tell how many people, like, do I have to count physically?
Yes.
I have to count physically.
Yep. Old school.
Okay. All right. Old school. No problem.
Time for Corey's math face.
Okay. 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 No problem. Here we go. I'll get my dice. Okay. Okay. We have a winner. The winner of our drawing is Fencing Frog. Congratulations. Congratulations, Fencing Frog. So here's what you should do. Send an email to info@signumu.org and just say that you won a space token, and we'll get you connected. We'll notify Jenny Goslin over in the space program, and she'll get you your token. Very good. Excellent. Very good. Okay. Field trip time. And I'll just say before everybody leaves, don't forget, you can make your donation at signumuniversity.org/donate. I strongly urge you to make a donation to help support Signum and everything that we are doing here during our fall fundraising campaign. All right. And now, field trip time. And we are celebrating the lower levels being on fire by completing the section of Moria in Lotro that was inspired by that sentence, and moving on to the next part, which was inspired by a sentence we've already read.
Indeed so. We're going from fire to water.
That's right. We're going to the waterworks because the waterworks, of course, were clearly inspired by, you'll remember those passages where they were passing over chasms that had water down beneath it, and included where they could hear the sound of like wheels turning and things. Very, very far down below, like in the chasms that Pippin was a little uncomfortable jumping over.
All right, I'll wait for you to get back in.
I'm coming back in. So, of course, the makers of Lotro decided that one of the places in Moria, in the deep parts of Moria, should be not just a place with water in it, but a place where there were, in fact, waterworks, where there were huge water wheels and whatever. We're gonna explore and see what they put down there. And of course, most Lotro folks will know that the waterworks are also located directly below the well, Pippin's well, into which he cast his stone. Right.
Unfortunately, we do have a poor level 7 who we cannot bring with us.
Oh dear. Yes, that is hard. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going back to...
Let's get you in the raid.
Anazar Mekim for the last time. And then we can stable master to where we ended last time. Okay, and then I'm stable mastering over to, was it no, what is it called?
The shadow of Mordor
Hudnul
will
Maiden,
not long
that's the
fill
one.
the halls of Khazad-dûm.
You should actually... which one are you missing?
What do you-
Rotting cellar?
What do you mean missing?
Oh, you haven't been there yet. We'll go there.
No. We're going to pick up where we left off last time, and then we'll go to the new one.
No, I was looking at your list of
Oh, stable masters?
yeah.
Okay. So here we are.
I'll be there momentarily.
Okay.
This is the second time in less than a week that you've been in a full raid. What?
It's true. It's true.
For those who don't know, we took Corey through the Abyss of Mordath. It was glorious.
That's right. On my Griffith stream last Friday, I did the Abyss of Mordath. Completed the lore pages, the Lost Lore of Moria deed. All right. So we're going to go right from out here up the stairs. I guess I can mount up for the first part of it. I don't like to go too fast when exploring new places, but so we'll say goodbye to the remarkably grandiose archway towards the mithril lodes, to which we shall return later. And now let's head out. We're going to go up the stairs and into the next section. So I have to admit, I'm a little surprised at how comparatively domestic the Flaming Deeps have been. Like what we found here, we found places where they're actively mining, transitions to the other places where they mined mithril. We've found a bunch of different like housing places, both directly for miners and otherwise. Mm-hmm. But I would have expected, I did expect when I first came to the Flaming Deeps, it to be, I don't know, more like wild, I guess. I didn't fully expect. It's much more like, I don't know, civilized, I guess, than I was expecting.
I can understand that. I mean, deeps kind of for me implies that, you know, we were talking about the lower deeps and whatnot is like
right.
What's really low.
Right.
And I would have thought deeps means you're really far away from the hub of civilization.
Right. What is going on in this room? So this is like a transitional room. It's a huge transitional room. We've got a whole bunch of
just like room heating.
Fire down here. Like just licking flames, not even lava, just flames. The fumes are similar to what we've seen elsewhere. But we're going up twice, which is, and then this is just floor over here. Huh.
Well, I mean, with such a large cavernous space, wouldn't they need some kind of heating to keep things vaguely warm?
Well, yeah, sure. But again, I think like this close, the Flaming Deeps certainly has not seemed to have a heating problem. Ooh, look at those stained glass windows. That's quite interesting. Have we seen stained glass anywhere? In Moria?
Way back in... Well, not in Moria, I don't think so, no. I don't recall seeing any stained glass-like looking objects.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, this... It looks less like well, it does look like stained glass windows, but also puts me in mind of mosaics.
Yeah, it might be stone. It might not be glass at all. Yeah, it could be glazed tile. Too. I agree. But yeah, that's really odd. It looks like those red... So they look like lollipops. Because they even have a stick beneath them.
Yes, they do. It has a kind of cathedral-y sort of feel to it. Especially if you look at the ones in the more pointed archways off to the left and the right. There's like a different, completely more colorful design.
Whoa.
It looks more like stained glass.
Yeah.
Careful.
Yeah, even more. Wow, yes, even more stained glassy. And that looks like...
So do you think these are windows or just colored mosaics?
Huh. I mean, it does look almost like the way that the light is reflecting off it. It almost does look like it's totally opaque.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You certainly can't see any evidence of anything behind it.
What if these are dwarven townhouses?
could be, but my goodness. So what is that? Those look like 2 candles. And then, what is that, like a flower in the middle?
Kind of like a crown on top as well.
Yeah, it does look a little crowny.
It could be like a flower, the little golden bit, like could be a crown or it could be a flower. But it kind of looks like a crown with the other points going on.
Yeah, and like with a big like diamond shaped like emerald or something in the front, the green. It does look a little crownish. Okay. Well, that's really interesting. And whoa, look at this wall over here. And this shiny, reflective. Maybe it's just weird lighting.
It's weird lighting because I'm not seeing it in mine.
Oh, okay.
Now you may have also the wall below it is a gray shape or gray color.
Uh-huh.
Versus yours looks very blue.
Yeah, it looks very blue. Oh, it's the shadows. You can see down there it looks the same blue where it's in the shadows.
I might have the shadows turned off.
Uh-huh. Yeah, so it's the shadows that make it
Fascinating.
look so blue. Okay, but outside of the blue, it's a normal wall. It just looks really weird there. Okay, but we got the same decorations up top there. It does look almost like a tulip, laughed Laureneth. I was thinking the same thing up at the top. I do agree with that it looks a little crown-like, the whole thing. But candles? Crown? Flowers? Anyway, not what I was expecting. Lollipops? Also kind of look like the little targets that you shoot at a carnival. You know, that flop down when you hit them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Though probably the dwarves of Khazad-dûm would not have appreciated our reenacting that and to experiment.
Neither will Camp Freelander probably.
Yeah, it's just really interesting.
I know, you don't know.
And in such a, like just the cut stone wall, this looks, apart from the trim, which is distinctly dwarvish, you could take this and put it on like a hillside in the North Downs and I wouldn't bat an eye at it.
There's definitely a lot of the same designs. I'm seeing some of the textures, like the copper stars and circles one right above the door arch.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen that before, not just in Moria.
The stars and yes, yeah, I agree. But that's been dwarvish. Like we've seen it at the, you know, the broken bridge over the Anduin, the one Wigan just went over, up to the blue dwarf hold.
Scarhold.
Scarhold.
Oh, you're thinking it.
No, the other one.
Oh.
On the other side of the river, where we met we met up with Durin again.
Oh, Arakurfu.
Yeah. Up. Darn it! Hang on, I gotta look it up now because I'm getting. Oh, hang on, that was what I wanted. Rovanian. Vales of Anduin. Where'd it go?
Was the line flood at the top?
That was Sundergrot. That was what I'm talking about.
Oh, yes, Sundergrot.
The bridge over to Sundergrot.
See, even I forgot about it.
There we go. Okay. That's the one. Anyway, yeah, like that bridge and some of the other external dwarf buildings and stuff around the Misty Mountains. We've seen that kind of the rings and diamond trim there.
Yep, I remember.
Okay, so then we go through this kind of trippy tunnel. Whoa. Huge. Oh, and we got the same tunnels going in different directions here. Okay. And now we get the same grating but no more fires underneath. That's interesting.
Got some banners across with an interesting design. It's a geometric design. It doesn't really say who it belongs to. I mean, obviously Dwarven.
Wait, which banner?
Yeah, the red banner, the pinkish banners over the thing we just came through. That's flanked by two dwarves.
Oh, like the bunting there. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the bunting, yeah.
Yeah. And you're right,
These
the
are some-
geometric kind of knot designs make it definitely look dwarvish. But it is interesting that there's fabric.
Yeah, and look at these two dwarf statues flanking the door we just came through, the archway.
Uh-huh.
They're very old and very crude by dwarf design.
Yeah, you're right. I like this guy on the left, especially if you look at his posture, it looks much more awkward.
I mean, the rough-hewn stone. I'm curious about the design in the chest plate, because that looks like something you'd find in like Barrow Downey sort of tomb
Yes,
thing.
but we've seen that kind of thing in archways, like as the keystone of arches, and set into walls. We've seen that pattern a bunch of times in Moria. But I agree. It has always reminded me of that, like the kind of swirling patterns and stuff. But I agree, this does look very old, which is weird, because it's not like this can be that much older than the rest of Moria, because it's not like they started here or something. Who knows? Maybe they just
I wonder if the roughness of the construction, you might say, well, maybe it kind of just worn away over the years for whatever reason, but then the surrounding stone doesn't show the same wear and tear. It has a little bit of greenery on it.
Yes.
I'm honestly kind of wondering if maybe these statues were, I don't know, made by 5-year-old dwarves, like apprentices or something.
Yeah, I mean, maybe this is where, maybe like because those looked really rough, they're like, oh yeah, that's great. We know just where to put it, down where nobody will see it. It's possible. It's possible. All right. Well, obviously there's much to explore here. I love the first impressions of this enormous natural cavern. And we can already see from here, just at first impression upon coming in, the combination of dwarvish structure and architecture with natural stone. The ways in which you get like this whole mass of spires which look like stalagmites poking up right within this huge natural cave. I think that's pretty cool.
But they still have load-bearing members, and a couple of them that were broken.
Yeah, it does look that way. Okay, well, let's head up. Let's find the stable master and milestone down here so we can start here next time. There's a lot to explore down here, obviously, and we're not going to
remember where the stairs are.
Get through much of it here today. But hang on a second. We got to go up. We're on a different level.
have to go up, yep.
Well, shoot. I forgot about that.
It's fine.
So we got to go. We can't go through the tunnel. We got to go around.
No, we're going to go up over here. This is the way I go anyway. Oh, worst case, you could have just let yourself die and then wind up at the rally circle. Will be right next to the stable master.
That's true. I have very vague memories of the. I did quest through here, but I have rather vague memories of it. Okay. I found a little stairs up. Or there's no. These are the bigger stairs up. Aha, found the res circle. Must be on the right track.
And I have to give a shout out to World Builder Scenario and the Standing Stone team who made the Rotting Cellar, this location, swift travelable for those who have access to swift travel.
Ah.
It didn't used to be.
Okay, gonna set my milestone. Here we are. In the Rotting Cellar, which is not all that picturesque a name.
And depending on which corner you're in, not that lovely of a smell either.
Yes. And I'll introduce myself
The
to the
lords
stable
of
master.
Moria have returned.
Oh, that's right. I lost the dolphin view and the vile maw because they changed him.
Yep, you have to rediscover them. But thankfully, they're not that far away.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway,
If you still have the deep descent, I mean, that should be a swift travel now.
I don't actually have the deep descent.
Oh, gasp horror.
Because it's... Again, that was one of the ones that we got to before they changed them.
Yeah, the only ones I'm missing are the Silvertine worksite, where Spawner is. Or Suena, maybe? No, that's where the goats are. Okay, I know where they are.
Well, we'll get there.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Well, yeah.
All
We'll
right.
get there.
Entrance to the vile maw.
Yep, instant space.
Uh-huh. Okay. No problem. All right. Very good. Well, we shall begin here for the next several weeks until we finish exploring around the waterworks, which
Hooray!
will be a bit of an adventure because of the multi-level thing, but all right. Very good. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week for more fun in the waterworks. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.